Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 88, B, top of the page, with the words Ben Sorer Umore. Shiratsu aviv imo limchon lo mochalin lo. The second matter is that in the case of a stubborn, rebellious son whose father and mother sought to forgive him for his gluttonous and drunken conduct and decided not to bring him to court, they can forgive him. Zaken mamre shiratsu bezin mecholo mochalin lo. A zaken mamre shiratsu bedin limecholo mochalin lo. Oh, that's a good one. Zaken mamre. כשבאתי אצל חברה שבדרום, על שניים הודו לי, על זקן ממרא לא הודו לי. כדי שלא ירבו מחלוקת בישראל תיובתו. The third is that in a case of a rebellious elder whom his court sought to forgive for his deviation from their ruling, they can forgive him. And when I came to my colleagues in the South, with regard to two of the cases, they agreed with me, but with regard to rebellious elders, they did not agree with me, so that discord would not proliferate in Israel. This supports the opinion of Rabbi Elazar and is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Kahana. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso, Rabbi Yosef Mechila, lo hayom marabim machlokas b'Yisrael, אלא באזן של 71, יושבים מלשכת הגוזיס, ושני בתי דינין של 23, אחד יושב על פתח הר הבית, ואחד יושב על פתח העזרא, ושאר בתי דינין של 23, יושבים בכל ארץ ישראל. It is taught in Brayso that Rabbi Yossi said initially discord would not proliferate among Israel. Rather, the court of 71 judges would sit in the chamber of hewn stone. And there were two additional courts, each consisting of 23 judges. One would convene at the entrance to the Temple Mount, and one would convene at the entrance to the Temple Courtyard. And all the other courts, consisting of 23 judges, would convene in all cities inhabited by the Jewish people. הוא צריך הדבר לשאול שואלים מבית שבאיראן אם שמעו אמר להן, אם לאו בואין לזה שסמוך איראן, אם שמעו אמר להם, אם לאו בואין לזה שעל פתח הר הבית, אם שמעו אמר להם, אם לאו בואין לזה שעל פתח העזרא. If the matter was unclear and it was necessary to ask and clarify it, those in search of the halacha would ask the court that is in their city if the members of the court heard a clear halachic ruling. With regard to that matter, they said to them, and if not, they would come to a court that is adjacent to their city. If the members of the court heard a clear halachic ruling with regard to that matter, they said to them, and if not, they would come to the court at the entrance of the Temple Mount. If the members of the court heard a clear halachic ruling with regard to that matter, they said to them, and if not, they would come to the court at the entrance to the temple courtyard. Omer, כך דרשתי וכך דרשו חבריי, כך למדתי וכך לימדו חבריי, אם שמע אמרו להם, ואם לאו אלו ואלו באים ללשכת הגזית, ששם יושבים מתמיד של שחר עד תמיד של בין הארבעים. And the elder whose ruling deviated from the ruling of his colleagues says, this is what I interpreted, and that is what my colleagues interpreted. This is what I taught, and that is what my colleagues taught. If the members of the court heard a clear halakhic ruling with regard to that matter, they said to them, and if not, these judges and those judges would come to the chamber of hewn stone, where the Sanhedrin would be convened from the time that daily morning offering is sacrificed until the time that the daily afternoon offering is being sacrificed. וכשבתות וימים טובים יושבים בחיל, נשאל השאלה בפניהם אם שמעו אמרו להם, אם לאו עומדים למניין רבו המטעמים, timu rabu metarin tiaru. And on Shabbatot and festivals, when court is not in session, the members of the court would sit at the rampart. when a question was asked before them, if the members of the court heard clear halakhic ruling with regard to that matter, they would say to them, and if not, they would stand for a vote on the matter. If the judges who deemed the item in question ritually impure outnumbered those who deemed it pure, the court would deem the item impure. If the judges who deemed the item in question ritually pure outnumbered those who deemed it pure, the court would deem the item pure. Mishrabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel shelo shimshu kol tzorkan rabu machloket b'Yisrael v'naseh Torah k'shtei Torot. From the time that the disciples of Shammai and Hillel grew in number, and they were disciples who did not attend to their masters to the requisite degree, dispute proliferated among the Jewish people, and the Torah became like two Torahs. Two disparate systems of halacha developed, and there was no longer a halacha consensus with regard to every matter. Misham kotvin v'sholchin bechol mekomot kol mi shehu chacham mushval berech v'dat habriot nocha himenu yehi dayan be'iro misham mu'alin oto lehar bayit misham le'ezra misham le'lishkat hakazit. The Bride continues its discussion of the working of the Sanhedrin. From there, the Sanhedrin writes and disputes. The Sanhedrin writes and dispatches the following statement to all places: anyone who is wise and humble, and the minds of people are at ease with him, shall be a judge in this city. If he is successful in this city, from there they promote him to the court at the entrance of the Temple Mount. And if there is a vacant seat on the court, and from there they promote him to the court at the entrance to the temple courtyard, and from there to the court at the chamber of the hewn stone. Shkat HaGazit. Shalachu mitam. Eze ben ha'olam haba. Anvatan ushval berech. Shayef. Ayal shayef v'nafik. Karis baraita tidira. V'lo mechazik p'tiyufta lenafshe. Yehavu ber Rabbanan inayu b'chol berav ula bar abba. Apropos to the appointment of judges, the Gemara relates that they sent the following statement from there, meaning Eretz Yisrael: who is the one destined to receive a place in the world to come? It is one who is modest and humble, who bows and enters and bows and exits, and who studies Torah regularly, and who does not take credit for himself. The sages cast their eyes on Rav Ula bar Abba, and as they perceived him as the embodiment of all these characteristics. Chaliro v'shana tanu Rabbanan eno chayav ad sheyaseh kehorato o shioreh lacherim yasu kehorato. The Mishnah teaches that the rebellious elder returned to his city, and he taught in the manner that he was teaching previously. He is exempt from punishment unless he instructs others to act on the basis of his ruling. The sages taught he is not liable unless he acts in accordance with his ruling, or he instructs others and they act in accordance with his ruling. Bishlomo yoreh lachem yasu kehorato mikor alav barkata lahu v'yashe barkata lahu ela sheyaseh kehorato mikarana mitbarkata lahu hatinachecha di'ori b'chele b'dam d'mikor alav barkata lahu v'yashe barkata lahu ela hecha di'ori cha b'chay v'mitzvot bezdin mikor alav mitbarkata lahu. The Gemara challenges granted if he instructs others and they act in accordance with his ruling. There is a novel element in the fact that he is liable to be executed, as initially, before he was deemed a rebellious elder, he is not liable to receive the death penalty for instructing others to perform the transgression, and now he is to receive the death penalty. But if he acts in accordance with his ruling initially, before he was deemed a rebellious elder, he is also liable to receive the death penalty for performing that action. The Gemara clarifies the difficulty. This works out well in a case where he ruled with regard to forbidden fat and blood, as initially he would not have been liable to receive the death penalty. Rather, he would have been liable to receive karet. And now, he is liable to receive the death penalty, but in a case where he ruled with regard to a transgression for which one is liable to receive a court-imposed death penalty, initially he is also liable to receive the death penalty. Mikara ba'i hatra'a, hashtalo ba'i hatra'a. The Gemara explains there is a novel element even in a case where he acts in accordance with his ruling, As initially, before he is deemed a rebellious elder, he requires forewarning in order to be executed. Now, he does not require forewarning in order to be executed. Mesis lilo bayatra ma'ikala meimar mikara I amar ta'ama mikablinan mine hashda yamar ta'ama lo mikablinan mine. The Gemara asks if the rebellious elder's ruling was with regard to one who instigates others to engage in idol worship who does not require forewarning. What is there to say? Both before and after he is deemed a rebellious elder, he is executed without forewarning. The Gemara answers initially, before the rebellious elder ruled that instigating others to engage in idol worship is permitted, if after he instigated others he stated a reason why he thought that it is permitted, we accept his explanation from him and exempt him. Now, after he issued the divergent ruling, if he stated a reason, we do not accept the explanation from him, since he already indicated that he holds that instigating others to engage in idol worship incitement is permitted, and that is the reason that he engaged in instigation. And that's the end of that. And we start a new Mishnah here. Chomer b'divrei Sofrim midivrei Torah. Ha'omer ein tefillin k'dei la'avor al divrei Torah patur. Chamesh totafot lehosif al divrei Sofrim chayav. That's the whole Mishnah. With regard to the rulings of the rebellious elder, the Mishnah states, there is a greater stringency with regard to traditional rabbinic interpretations of the Torah than with regard to matters of Torah. If one states there is no mitzvah to don phylacteries, and his intention is in order to have others violate matters of Torah, he is exempt from punishment. As a rebellious elder, one who disputes matters written explicitly in the Torah is not considered an elder and a Torah scholar, and therefore does not assume the status of a rebellious elder. If, however, he disputed if someone disputes matters of the Torah, then obviously we kick him out. So that's not acceptable, but it doesn't mean that he's a rebellious elder. He has to be within the Torah, but arguing against the rabbis specifically. If, however, he disputed a matter based on rabbinic tradition, for example, he said there should be 5 compartments in the phylacteries of the head, in order to add an extra compartment to the 4 established according to the traditional rabbinic interpretation of the Torah, he is liable. Interesting. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Yehoshua, Eino chayav ela al davar, she'ikaro midivrei Torah, perusho midivrei Sofrim, v'yesh bo lehosif, v'im hosif gorea, v'ein lanu ela tefillin, aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar says that Rabbi Yehoshua says, one is only liable only for issuing a ruling with regard to a matter whose basic obligation is from matters of Torah, and his explanation is from the traditional interpretations of Torah, and which includes the possibility to add it. And if one added to it, one compromises his fulfillment of the mitzvah and does not satisfy his obligation. And we have only the mitzvah to don phylacteries that meets these criteria. And Rabbi Oshia's statement is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, a rebellious elder is liable only for a matter whose essence is from the matters of the Torah, and whose explanation is from traditional rabbinic interpretations of the Torah. V'yikalu di'ikarum divrei Torah, u'perush midivrei Soferim, v'yesh bo lehosif, v'im hosif goreah. The Gemara asks, but isn't there the mitzvah of lulav and the other species that one takes on the festival of Sukkot, whose essence is from the matters of Torah, and whose explanation is from traditional rabbinic interpretations that establish the identity and the number of the 4 species enumerated in the Torah, and which includes the possibility to add other species to it. And if one added to it, one compromises his fulfillment of the mitzvah and does not satisfy his obligation. Belulav ma'isviralan isaviralan delulav ein tzarich eged hay lechodekai ve'hay lechodekai ve'isviralan tzarich eged garuam ve'omer hu. The Gemara rejects this possibility. That is not the case. As with regards to the mitzvah of lulav, what do we hold? If we hold that fundamentally a lulav does not require binding of the species together in order to fulfill the mitzvah, then adding an additional species is inconsequential, as these species with which he fulfills the mitzvah stand alone, and that additional species stands alone. It is as though he were holding a species of the mitzvah and an additional unrelated item that does not affect fulfillment of the mitzvah. And if we hold that a lulav requires binding of the four species together in order to fulfill the mitzvah, fulfilling the mitzvah is already compromised from the outset. The rebellious elder is liable only when the object of the mitzvah was as it should be, and the addition compromised that object and disqualifies it. In this case, the object was never as it should be. The Gemara asks, but isn't there the mitzvah of ritual fringes, which are tzitzit, whose essence is from matters of Torah, and whose explanation is from traditional rabbinic interpretations that establish the number of fringes enumerated in the Torah and the number of threads in each fringe, and which includes the possibility to add fringes or threads to it. And if one added to it, one compromises his fulfillment of the mitzvah, and does that satisfy his obligation? Betzitzis ma'isviralan isviran dekesher elyon lav deoraisa. The Gemara rejects this possibility. That is not the case. As with regard to ritual fringes, what do we hold? If we hold that the upper knot is not mandated by Torah law, and one fulfills his obligation by placing the threads on the corner of the garment, these threads with which he fulfills the mitzvah are independent, and that additional thread is independent and does not compromise fulfillment of the mitzvah. The additional string is not considered as joined to the required strings. And if we hold